Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The 2024 season for Hugh Freeze, this Auburn program, obviously did not go as expected for a lot of Auburn fans, and I'm kind of one of them. Like I was the Auburn fans who've been rocking with the boys going back to, the early summer months, kind of knew this was a team that I was really high on in terms of making a jump in 2024. That jump has clearly not happened. Year three for Hugh Freeze in 2025, it's going to be as big as it gets. It's do or die for Hugh Freeze, and it's not just about making improvements. It's about getting this team to compete for an SEC championship in 2026. Or at least when I look at it, it's year three at Auburn. That's the expectation that I think a lot of Auburn fans have Hugh Freeze going into the 2025 season. Want to take a look at kind of a review of this Auburn depth chart and talk about positions and throw out some names of targets for Auburn to go get in the transfer portal. Now, before we get into it, as always, I think most importantly to the Auburn fans, y'all know we're going to be talking a lot about this program over the next couple of weeks and months. Would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. We're going to start, just kind of brainstorming a little bit in terms of what players, what kind of players, what position groups we would like to see Auburn go out and address in the transfer portal. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. I have a feeling it's going to be a really fun next couple of weeks and months for this Auburn program during the offseason. Without further ado, let's get into it. I think the offseason is predicated at getting the quarterback position right. There were a lot of Auburn fans that were frustrated that the quarterback position wasn't addressed last year in this offseason. With the product on the field, I think a lot of those Auburn fans were absolutely right. Now, I kind of got that wrong. I thought Payton Thorne would take a step and then they go all in on a quarterback in 2025. That's what we're going to see. You know what I mean? I think Auburn will be one of the most significant players, if not the most significant player in the transfer portal at the quarterback position. No, I think it starts with kind of evaluating the quarterbacks that you have on your roster right now. And there's really two that I think most Auburn fans are interested in, Hank Brown and Walker White. From a personal standpoint, I would like to see both of these quarterbacks get some opportunities towards the back half of 2024. And Hugh Freeze even said as much. Like the back half of this season, you kind of want to know what you have in 2025. Now, my personal opinion is Hank Brown and Walker, and maybe even Walker White, they can play some good football. I don't think that's going to stop Auburn from getting aggressive in the transfer portal with getting the quarterback position right. I think they want a proven commodity coming in to run this Auburn offense in 2025. And quite frankly, Hugh Freeze's job, it depends on it. And I don't think Hugh Freeze is willing to take that bet on a guy like Hank Brown or Walker White. I think he wants a proven commodity. And I think that's exactly what Auburn should be going out and doing. And you take a look at the value that a guy like Cam Ward has brought to Miami. I'll say this: I've watched every single Miami game. That's a maybe 500 team if they don't have Cam Ward at the quarterback spot. Now we're talking about Miami as a top 5 team in the country. That's what an elite quarterback can do to a program. Auburn's got to try to get one of those kind of guys in the transfer portal. Now, that opens up the conversation of, all right, well, what quarterbacks are going to be in the transfer portal? I got a couple names that I want to talk about. One, Noah Fafita at Arizona decided to stay with Arizona after a phenomenal sophomore season in 2023. That clearly hasn't worked. I'd be quite confident in saying that Noah Fafita will be in the transfer portal after this season. I think he could fit what Hugh Freeze kind of wants to do on offense. And again, that's a proven commodity where he has talent around him. He can be a really good quarterback, won 10 games with Arizona last year. That's one of the names that I think will be in the portal, that I think will be one of the best quarterbacks in the transfer portal. A couple other names to throw around. And then this one, I'm not sure if it's going to happen because he certainly could go to the NFL. Garrett Nussmeier. And why I say Garrett Nussmeier, has got one more year of eligibility. Hasn't, in my mind, and we'll see what the NFL scouts say, played his way into a first round NFL draft pick, at least from what I've seen from Garrett Nussmeier. And they got the number one quarterback in the country in 2025 in Bryce Underwood. what if Garrett Nussmeier decides to hit the transfer portal? That could be one of the best names that we see. Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma certainly could be one. Miller Moss at USC could be one. Again, it's kind of hard to evaluate the quarterbacks that you don't really know what you're going to have. But at the end of the day, you got to think Auburn will not be outbid, so to speak, in terms of getting a quarterback in the transfer portal in a high end one at that. And so that's the goal number one is you want to make sure you have a difference maker at quarterback coming in to run this offense in 2025. Looking at the other positions on the offense, I personally think, and this kind of comes down to the conversation of being calculated in terms of the resources and time and energy that you're spending in the transfer portal. You want to make sure you're going out and addressing positions that are of need. I look at the wide receiver position and say, yeah, maybe you could add a veteran presence in that room. But I look at Cam Coleman. I look at what we've seen from Malcolm Simmons. I look at what Perry Thompson could look like going into year two. Got a guy like Derek Smith coming in as a true freshman. To me, that's a pretty solid young stable of wide receivers. I don't think it's going to be a priority position for Auburn. And Auburn fans, y'all might disagree, so I would love to hear that in the comment section. But I don't think that's a position that I'm necessarily going out of my way to target. Running back, I'm a massive fan of Jeremiah Cobb. I will ride with Jeremiah Cobb till he's no longer with Auburn. So I think you're good at the running back spot. Jarquez Hunter's been very good. I think Jeremiah Cobb can give you similar production. Offensive line. This will be the other position on offense where I think a lot of resources will be invested to getting this offensive line right. I mean, as it sits right now, you are losing 4 to 5 guys that have been big time contributors for Auburn on the offensive line. Quite frankly, I don't think it's been that great in pass protection. I think they can move bodies in the run game. Pass protection has been a problem. Outside of Connor Lew, I think there's a lot of question marks at both tackle spots, at both guard spots. I think you have some guys that you think and know could probably be serviceable guards. I'd want to make sure I'm getting the tackle positions right. That's a hard position to address in the transfer portal because we know that there's a lot of teams that are going to be looking for tackles in the portal. But that's probably position number 2 that if you're Auburn and you're going to invest a ton of money in getting one of the best quarterbacks in the transfer portal, you don't want to waste that quarterback with an offensive line that can't protect them. And so you got to make sure you're getting an offensive line. And it's hard for us to evaluate. You look at some of the young cats on this roster and say, we don't see them at practice. We don't know how close they are to being serviceable offensive linemen, but just the raw experience that you're losing on the offensive line, you probably want to make sure you're getting some proven commodities coming in on the offensive line. Now, going to the defensive side of the football, this is where I'm kind of optimistic that Auburn is going to be a really fun defense next year, and it starts on the defensive line. Keldrick Falk has quietly become one of the best defensive linemen that we see in the SEC. You look at Amaris Williams taking that year 2 jump, same thing with Jamonte Waller. TJ Lindsey was another guy I liked in the 2024 class. You have some young talent, but you also have some talent in that 2025 class that's coming in now. I'm not sure. It's probably the best defensive line class that we see in the country. I'm not sure if every single one of those true freshmen, those guys coming into the 2025 class, are going to be ready to play, but you got to think some of them are going to be. If you were to address the defensive line, it'd probably be very similar to how Auburn did it last cycle. That is, let's go get some depth. You know, you added guys like Isaiah Rakes, you added guys like Gage Keys just to kind of solidify that defensive line rotation. Now, if you can get a difference maker, go get a difference maker. When you have difference makers on the defensive line, it gets really easy to play good defense. I think you have some difference makers already on your roster that will be difference makers in 2025, like Keldrick Falk, Amaris Williams, potentially even Jamonte Waller. Linebacker will probably be a position. Again, I really like a cat like DeMarcus Riddick, but you're losing a lot of guys that have played a lot of football, right? Eugene Asante, Austin Keys. You want linebackers that have seen and played a lot of football, especially when when you got that green dot. You probably are going to get at least one veteran proven commodity linebacker. And then the back end, I kind of like I know this depth chart isn't completely accurate, but it kind of paints us a little bit of a picture of what this roster looks like. I kind of like the young talent, like Jay Crawford, true freshman, dude. You look at Kane Lee, maybe not the jump we expected in his second year, but you kind of know what you have with him. J.C. Hart, Caleb Harris as a true freshman. I think they're pretty good in the secondary. And I look at this Auburn team, and it comes down to a couple of position groups. I think most notably the quarterback spot in the offensive line. If you can get those two positions right, I think that wide receiver room could be really, really good in the 2025 year. I think you're going to have a fine running back room. If you can get that quarterback position right, again, this Auburn team, I think, can be extremely dangerous in 2025. Now, we'll continue to have this conversation as names start to hit the transfer portal, as they start to become available, and as we see what names hit the transfer portal on this Auburn roster as well. But at the end of the day, it's going to be predicated at the quarterback spot. We'll see where Auburn decides to, for lack of better terms, throw their money at in terms of attracting a quarterback. You're going to have such a young, talented quarterback room, but you probably want a bridge. You probably want a guy in 2025 that's played a lot of football. And then going into 2026, you got a guy like Walker White and Deuce Knight. That's a good problem to have. But I think you want a quarterback that you know is going to come in and be a difference maker in the 2025 year. We'll continue to update and have this conversation as Auburn starts to get aggressive in the transfer portal. I think you make no mistake about it. Hugh Freeze feels the pressure. Like he knows this is an offseason where he has to absolutely crush if he wants to keep his job at Auburn. We'll sign out there. Let it fly in the comment section. A lot of different position groups and names that I think are really intriguing around this team. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.